Hi, you're listening to the Professional Speaks podcast with me, Craig McKellar, your host. As an ex-Big Four auditor for 6 years, I now run a specialist recruitment consultancy called McKellar Consulting. Throughout this podcast, I speak to senior leaders from the professional services community, past, present and future. These leaders work in accounting and finance, audit, tax, corporate finance, consulting, legal and investments. In the comfort of their own office, I will be posing questions to our guests to gain insights from them across a variety of topics, including balancing work and life, mental health and mindset, risk-taking, and effective leadership. These insights will help us learn, be inspired, grow, and ultimately succeed in what we want to achieve in our careers. Here's what's coming up on today's episode.
I've got a fiance, 2 young children, we're moving house. I would say how do I manage it? The answer is I've not been. That's the truthful answer. I've been throwing everything into this. I've been 7 days a week for a lot of time. It's not that great. I just said I had the weekend off this weekend, so it's not all the time, but it's been pretty frequent. And we had a very busy period just past that wasn't predicted to be that busy. But I was in 7 days. I was leaving before my daughter woke up. I was coming back after she'd gone to bed, consistently. And it wasn't great.
In this episode, I am joined by James Edwards, who is a tax director and co-founder of Anderson and Edwards, which is an independent accounting and taxation professional services firm in Edinburgh. We focus on why James set up his own company and all the ups and downs that go with that, as well as insightful chats around his approach to sales and marketing and why he hasn't been attracted to working as a tax advisor in-house. So for listeners and viewers who don't know you, James, you're currently tax director and co-founder of Anderson and Edwards, which is a professional services accounting and taxation firm, professional services firm here in Edinburgh.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Co-founder. It's quite an interesting thing. It's 50-50, but I called myself tax director. Dean, I thought he was going to call himself accounts director, but he called himself managing director. So that's a little bit of a sort of a rivalry going on. But no, it is 50-50. Co-founder, I suppose.
Well, maybe you need managed. We'll come on to that.
Maybe we will. I think anyone who knows me will probably. There's a whole skill there, right? Can you manage me? That's good.
But we have listeners, kind of all around the world as well. So for people that don't know you, maybe just tell us a bit about you and your background. That would be helpful.
Yeah, sure. So I went to university, accounting and finance. Almost immediately, I knew that I didn't want to do the sort of more standard ICAS, so like the Scotland sort of standard qualification, the one that you sort of more well-known. And I very specifically wanted to do taxation, and actually a bit further than that, I wanted to do personal taxation. I like the whole relationship side of things. So finished university, got on a graduate sort of scheme down in Wiltshire, which is a lovely way of saying Swindon. I really enjoyed my time there, and it's nothing but farms, which is basically what I wanted to do. So I was at a big international firm there, and then I moved back up to Scotland, and sort of worked at smaller and smaller firms until eventually I was out by myself. But I've done the same thing for must be 15 years now, maybe. So it's that's basically what I've been doing. But yeah, that's the headline.
Did you? So your family from up here?
My mum's side of the family. My father's side from South Wales actually. But I was born in London. I moved up to Scotland with the most horrendous Surrey accent you've ever heard in your life. So I moved up to Fife with "Hello, mummy, hello, daddy," and you get rid of that pretty quickly when you're up there. But I sort of. University was in Edinburgh. I was in Edinburgh most weekends because greater family here, but so I would call Edinburgh my home. But as I was just saying, I'm about to move to Stirlingshire, so I'll still be in Edinburgh, but moving slightly.
Yeah, great. And just with, I guess you're talking about you wanted to do personal tax. Maybe when did you first kind of come across learning about personal tax and then thinking that's what you wanted to do?
This is a little bit morbid, which is what personal tax is, but while I was at university, my granny died. I wasn't particularly close with her, but she had a very complicated estate, like land, buildings, like various things going on, and complex family dynamics, and I just thought, I'd be quite good at this. And as you're studying accounting, you start to realise that a lot of the stuff, there's just so many avenues you could go. It's incredible. Like, I know that to people who aren't in this world, they see it as one thing, and maybe they see finance as one thing. But as soon as you're in it, you realise just like how varied and things can go. And I just thought, this is an area that I've got quite a lot of experience in, and I quite enjoy. I like that aspect of it. So that's what it was, and then an opportunity came up at a firm to do exactly what I wanted to do, and yeah, I felt quite lucky doing that. I only applied to one or two things, and yeah, it was pretty good. From a sort of family perspective, the Edinburgh side of the family, which was the more complex side of things, there was nothing, there was no real sort of person to look up to or anything. My dad was on the other side of the family. He was more, he set up a couple of businesses, but he was more a salesman for drugs reps and stuff for big drug companies and things. So yeah, that was sort of my background. There was no one that I sort of look up to in the sort of tax world. Yeah, I did sort of just find it by accident.
Yeah, and it'd be good to focus on the fact that you did set up your own tax company, and back in 2020.
I handed my notice in, my lovely safe job at the very start, just before the COVID pandemic. I handed my 3 months notice in, which was an interesting time. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people would wonder, like, why did you do that? And I suppose I never made any secret of the fact that I always had this. I wanted to prove I could do it. It was more of a challenge than any sort of great desire to run something. So that's what I did. And I passed my chartered tax advisor qualifications. I had a really low cost of living at the time. I had no responsibilities. That's all since changed and all that stuff. But I mean, really, I was sitting with a bunch of cash. I didn't have really much else going on, and I just thought, if I'm ever going to do this, it's going to be now. There were maybe one or two other sort of, I know you do a lot of recruitment stuff, there was maybe one or two sort of niggly things back in my, maybe about the firm I was at. I was perfectly happy. I wasn't unhappy in any way. But it was time for a change. I'd stopped learning, and I'd never found myself in a better position. And I just thought, I'm never going to get a better shot at this. And then, the COVID pandemic came in, and that was pretty scary at the time, but it didn't really affect anything. Like I say, I wasn't desperately looking for clients initially because I'd saved up a bit of money. And also, it was, what actually happened was there was a great leveler, in the sense of, you've got some guy at KPMG or Deloitte sitting in my bedroom giving tax advice. So was I. Yeah. It was a real opportunity to prove yourself. Honestly, it worked pretty well. But yeah, it wasn't planned, I can tell you. Would I do it again knowing that what was going to come? Probably not. I don't think I would have taken that risk. But yeah, that's what happened, and it ended up being quite a good thing.
I mean, did obviously, setting up your own business, and I know this myself as well, obviously you're not getting work handed to you, and you need to find the work. Did that come naturally to you? Had you kind of learnt some of those skills in your prior role, or you just kind of went for it?
In my previous role, very specifically, I was doing a lot of the client onboarding. So if there was a phone call or an email that came through, there was Jamie will be good at that, like a specific type of client maybe, and it's like, I'll do the first contact other than them initially contacting us. Or I would do a lot of networking events and stuff. I go to a lot of events like internally and externally with the firm, like representing the firm. So I'd done a lot of the sort of business development side before. Like just other skills, like I was a professional musician before I found tax and stuff. So performing, and that's what a lot of this stuff is. It's performing, like sort of charisma, confidence. Like I already had a lot of that. This sounds terrible as well, but I went out a lot. Like I went out bars in Edinburgh an awful lot. It's a big international city with the tourism and stuff. And you'd go out and you'd meet people. You'd get used to speaking to people that you wouldn't normally speak to. I think that's a great skill. I'm not telling trainees to go out and get steaming every night. That's not my advice. But it certainly has helped develop some of the more soft skills. The thing I was scared of was, how do I make the phone ring? Like, if I can get the phone to ring, yeah, cool. I'll probably get a sale if I can do the work at a reasonable price for them. But how do I get them to do it? I'd never done anything like that. And yeah, I was pretty scared of that. I'm not going to lie. But it did. It did. And it wasn't necessarily the stuff I wanted to do initially. But yeah, the phone rang. The phone rang a lot.
Yeah, and obviously, as you said, you were just starting as kind of, the pandemic was starting. We were all being told to work from home, like you say. So, everybody was at home no matter what company or level they were. What did you learn, I guess, in your first year of business, and was any of that attached to the fact that we were in a pandemic, or did some of your learnings? Could some of your learnings have taken place even if there wasn't a pandemic?
That's a really good question. Well, what I did, a little bit of context here is that I set up a firm before we set up Anderson Edwards. I set up a firm called Edinburgh Tax Expert, and that was just me. There was no one else involved at all. And the whole point behind this was I could do a lot of easy work. I'll have low costs. I'll just see if the phone will ring. I'll pick up some really easy work for me. And now, if you bear in mind the sort of work I was doing previously, we're talking old money wealth, like tens of millions of pounds, ex-chancellor tax returns. Like, I was involved in a lot of that stuff. And then all of a sudden I was switching to doing like construction industry scheme stuff, like really straightforward, processy work. And I could nail that. Like, I knew I could nail that. And so I was like, well, if I could be cheap and good, then I'll get clients.
Yeah.
So that was the logic. It was sort of let's see what happens. Now, what actually happened was that I got a lot of that easy work, and it was really horrible. Like, it wasn't stuff I wanted to do at all. It was the wrong sorts of clients for me. I was used to people being really appreciative. Is that a word? People being nice to me.
Yeah.
And the people at the end that I was dealing with just didn't respect it at all. It was like, my mate's accountant's cheaper, and I was like, I'm quoting legislation from before I was born to getting people out of £100 penalties, and I wasn't even charging for it because it was part of the overall like cheap service. And yeah, the phone rang a lot. But I just unplugged the phone. Like, honestly, it was horrific. I fair play to the people who do that, and honestly, there's a huge market for it. If you don't want to do it, do it, but it's not for me. It was really horrible. Now, I also picked up a lot of really big stuff, and I remember thinking, like, why are you contacting a firm that's marketed themselves like this? And it was like huge money, and I was thinking, you're lucky you've contacted me, because I know that like this is what needs to be done. But if you contacted like another firm that doesn't have someone with the qualifications that I do, you'd be in a bit of bother, because there's a really interesting quirk in here. And then it's sort of I realised I was getting more business stuff, which is not typically stuff I do. It's more individuals. And so I contacted Dean and I said, hey, I've got this wrong. Let's finish my company. Let's start up a new one. And there's work out there. I can get this work. I've proven it to myself now. But let's do it better. Let's rebrand. Let's do things differently. So yeah. In terms of learning, I'm so glad I did that.
Yeah,
it was an incredible learning experience.
I tell you what, as well. What comes to mind there again is your ability to on sales. You've just touched on. Your first hire was your co-founder. How did you get Dean? How did you convince him to
Dean
to give up his job?
That's a really good point. Dean knew what, like, I'd known Dean since university. We actually went to the same school. I was a couple of years older than him, but I didn't really know him. But we went to the same university. We were in the same classes, but he knew like what I wanted to do, and he knew that I'd be quite happy with him like pretty much running the thing, like changing it the way he wants to do it, as long as I allowed my creative control of whatever I want to do. And I think he was quite keen for this. The hardest part was convincing Dean's wife. I'll tell you what I did there. I knew I couldn't come at it from a look how much money we could make, and like that's irrelevant. It was. These are all the terrible things about working with me. We sat down having dinner, and I said, "This is all the bad stuff, like, and I want you to know it. And if it doesn't work, like, we can both go and get a job again. The glorious failures and all this stuff." But it ended up working. But I was just so open and honest about it. I was like, "This is what's going to happen." And yet, once I got her on board, I knew I could get Dean on.
Can't have been that bad a list then.
Well, no. I don't know. I maybe exaggerate some of my negative points actually, but that's sort of my whole thing. It's just like full transparency. It's like, right, this is what it's going to look like. This is the things that are going to be frustrating. These are the things that we're going to run into this problem in year 3. We're going to run into this problem in year 5, and well, it worked. I knew I could convince Dean. That Dean wasn't the issue, but like trying to convince his whole family was going to be difficult.
When I'm talking to people about moving jobs, moving roles, you know, sometimes it's down to somebody's risk appetite. You know, do they want to stay where they are, be comfortable that way, or do they want to, you know, take that risk, as it were, to try something new? You know, what would you say about yourself, and maybe even Dean's wife? You know, you know, what's the risk appetite?
It's really low. Like, we are really risk averse, and I know that comes across as a little bit strange, like just by the way that it comes across. Like, if you went and left a safe job to go and work by yourself, but no, this is a path we've gone down that's been well trodden. Like the way that we're running this business is exactly the same way that accountancy has been running for like 150 years. We've like really associated ourselves with the professional bodies. Like, we're trying really hard to be good. Like, we try not to take on work that we know that we could get the money in the door now, but are we 100% that we know how to do it? Probably won't take it on. In terms of hiring, we should have hired a long time ago, and we have hired. And actually, very recently, by the time this podcast comes out, it will have been announced, but we've just hired another senior person, but we didn't do that until we had the cash. And the budgets,
that's important, isn't it?
The budgets have all been done on the basis that they're going to do no work for the rest of the year. It's just super risk averse. And I know, because we deal with some businesses, most businesses don't run like that. They hire people on the basis that the work will come. We just haven't. We've just gone so slowly and so steadily, and honestly, it's worked really well for us. So that's how we've done it. And despite the persona that I give off, maybe honestly, I'm so risk averse. It's terrifying.
And having your your own business, or even being one of two, is very different to then growing it. You know, now you've got 4 people or 4 or 5 people. You know, and often I talk to leaders of businesses about balancing work and life, and that definition is very different to people. People have different opinions and mindsets on it. How is it for you? How do you manage it, or how have you managed it? Because obviously, when you started off, am I right in saying, because you were single, and now you're not so much?
I don't have 2 under 2 anymore, because my eldest has just turned 2. But I've got a fiance, 2 young children. We're moving house. To say how do I manage it, the answer is I've not been. That's the truthful answer. I've been throwing everything into this. Like, I've been 7 days a week for a lot of time. It's not that. I'm just saying I had the weekend off this weekend, so it's not all the time, but it's been pretty frequent. And we had a very busy period just past that wasn't predicted to be that busy. But I was in 7 days. I was leaving before my daughter woke up. I was coming back after she'd gone to bed, like, consistently, and it wasn't great. My fiance, she's been looking after the children while I've been working, and that's been unfair on her while I'm trying to do something that I've always wanted to do. That's a difficult conversation. Like, you have to have this person really on board with you, and it's not been smooth sailing, not at all. But open communication. I should point out, my fiance isn't finance or anything. She's a nurse at the Royal Infirmary, and on maternity. So her sort of knowledge of how my industry works, in terms of me going out to a networking event while she's looking after 2 children, and say, well, how much work did you pick up?
I have some similar conversations,
and it's very difficult, and you then almost have to, like, When the good stuff happens, you always have to like, right, okay, the company has just made X amount of money from this thing that I've done, and that's great, totally delighted about it. When am I going to see that money? When is the family going to see that money? That's what you're trying to manage as well, because you've got this long-term vision for your life and all this stuff. It's like, I'm working towards this, and this is how I'm going to get there, and things will get better at this time, and then you have to make sure that they do get better at the time that you've promised. And yeah, it's a very difficult balance. So in terms of how I'm managing it, poorly is the correct answer right now. But things are getting better, and they go in phases. Very much so. I will say the one thing that I've been really poor on, not just looking like family life and stuff, my health. I used to walk to work, and since I've moved, I get the bus now, and that was like the only exercise I did. And I can feel it now. I can really feel it now. And yeah, like that. I'm a young man, like 35, and it's like that's something that you really shouldn't take for granted. And so yeah, it's like huge things need to change.
Do you ever set yourself, kind of New Year's resolutions? Because I was also going to say that, recently, I sometimes I'm the same in the sense of, I'll make myself, I'll say to myself, well, I can't go and do, that session in the gym or whatever until I get some success at work, type of thing. Then I deserve it. Yeah. But I don't think that's the right thing to do. I think I can work better if I have a balance between my, working on my health as well as on my business. So sometimes I get to halfway through the year, and almost it gives you an opportunity to kind of reset and think, well, maybe I've not achieved my New Year's resolutions, but maybe I could have a half-year resolution type of thing. You're conscious of it. Does that change the fact for you? Does it help you think, right, I maybe should be a bit more intentional or proactive about some things?
Yeah, definitely. Like I say, like what's coming up for us is about a big move out of Edinburgh, and that will have to trigger a different sort of lifestyle in order to get a bit more balance to this. And it was worked towards, and that's an issue. Don't know about New Year's resolutions, that doesn't work in personal terms, because January is probably our busiest month. So if you start off on these great plans, so 1st of February maybe.
Yeah. When's the Chinese New Year? Exactly. Go along with that one.
Exactly. We just work on tax years, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah.
But no, it's something I try to be a bit more honest about. Don't get me wrong, it's not mean like for 5 years I've just been really terrible. But when I was a little bit less busy, I would maybe take time out of the day. I'd go to the gym, and actually, I did find myself being more productive. But it's a really difficult balancing act. And what I'm trying to say is, something has to give. Like if you either decide I'm not working this hard in the business, or I'm not going to spend that much time with my family, or whatever it is your own personal things are, the thing that was deemed to be the thing that I dropped the ball on is health-wise. Unfortunately, I've not received any consequences of that yet, but I mean, that is not something I'd recommend, and something I'm trying to remedy. So yeah, I try to be very open about that. It's difficult. It's very difficult. Yeah, don't underestimate it.
Or was any personal trainers listening?
Oh no, it's not to that. I might go to the gym a couple of times first, just so I'm not super embarrassed. But that's the point. Yeah.
No. Now, you were also talking about, that you go to networking events and things like that, and we've already touched on, kind of bringing in business. So, kind of what has your approach been to sales and marketing with Anderson and Edwards?
Yeah, well, as I said, I made some mistakes in the first year with the first business, and that was like just everything was done myself, and you could tell. Like, I enjoyed it, but you could tell. And then when we started the second business, I said, right, okay, we need to get someone who knows what they're doing. I met someone, Letitia, who's been with us since the very beginning, and she's been brilliant. It's just everything's just so professionally done in terms of our sort of marketing stuff and Canva and all this stuff I just don't know about, And so she sort of gave us like a plan, and this is what we're going to do. And then I've got my own individual stuff, the personal brand, I think is what the terminal is. I do that a lot, and that's really helpful. And then we've started to do more sports stuff. So we started off with the bowls club, which I go to. I'm rubbish at bowls. I played it a couple of times, and I won a trophy, but like I was just heavily carried by my teammates in that. But we sort of accidentally got involved because the ladies team, with that, they've not entered a ladies team in like 50 years, and that's like not a sexist thing, because they just couldn't organise enough people to do it. And then they said they would do it a couple of years ago if they raised enough money for shirts. So I was like, how much do you need? It was a couple $100. He's saying, yeah, cool, sponsor it, whatever. So it sort of accidentally turned up. It wasn't I'll sponsor this and how much money can I get back. Like I'm there anyway. And yeah, I picked up a couple of queries and stuff, but it was never for that purpose. It was just, like that's something companies do. Let's do it. And then we went a little bit harder, like another year with Spartans football. Like, I'm a rugby person. I know very little about football. I had a Wraith Rovers season ticket for a season. Some people might argue that's why I'm not into football, but yeah, Dean's heavily into football, and particularly the amateur level. He's got his like coaching badges and stuff like that. He does stuff at the weekends, so he sort of got into the Spartan stuff, and then they went and got promoted and became semi-pro, and it was like that was like the opposite of what we were trying to do. We were trying to do like they stay on this amateur side, but that's been great. And then recently, a really big thing is like way bigger. We did Watsonians rugby. So my family's got some Watsonians heritage. I personally didn't go to the school or any private school actually, but like a lot of my family did. So there's a bit of legacy there. I'm really into my rugby, so that was really good. In terms of why do people do this? I will tell you, I don't think anyone ever has walked past a sports stadium, looked at a billboard and gone, I want to use that service. I don't think that has ever happened. It certainly never happened to Anderson Airborne. I'd be surprised if it's ever happened to anyone else. But when you do these sorts of things, I think the important thing to remember is that it's sort of a touch point that you have to go. You have to get yourself involved. So, like if Watsonians or the Bowls Club or Spartans are doing something, I'll go along. And then you're sort of got an excuse to be there. You say, oh, this is one of the sponsors. And then you go and meet people. It's a way of opening doors. And one of our biggest issues, or it was maybe not on Dean's side of the business, but certainly on mine, legitimacy is probably our biggest problem. Like, I mean,
because you're small.
Yeah, exactly. So, like as I mentioned, I've dealt with lots of really big stuff before, but I'm tiny. Like, why would someone come with me with large wealth and stuff? And anything I can do to legitimise myself is solving that problem. And getting involved with prestigious organisations is one way to do that. And to give you an idea of this in action, like it got announced on LinkedIn that we were associated with this, and about 3 legal firms contacted me that week saying, oh, I saw you're involved with this guy. Like, we're involved with this guy too. Like, not necessarily a formal partnership, but it was like they'd heard of who I was, but then this extra thing was enough for them to contact me, and I picked up a piece of work, and then I picked up on 7 other pieces of work from it. Like, it works like that, but it doesn't work just throw some money at it and then it'll work. It's like you have to turn up, you have to go. Like, that's the whole point. You're trying to support the club, or trying to support them, and not just you're getting something out of it. You're trying to give them something too, other than just the money you give them. Like you're trying to support. So that's my advice to people doing this. It's not like my thing's real. Like I like Watsonians, so I turned up. But people can smell when you're not being real. So I would say that's probably the strategy. Is just. And
I mean, there's so many different ways to partner with a company as well, isn't there? You know, do you go in the magazine? Do you go in the billboard? Do you sponsor the shirt? Do you view it as it doesn't really matter what you do? It's just, you know, be a partner in some capacity, because then you are invited to events and things.
What I said initially with this sort of stuff was I was contacting the sort of marketing guy there, and I said, well, tell you what, you're going to host an event. I know one of your biggest problems is going to be like you've got a big event and you want someone to buy a table. You want to buy someone. It's like, hey, put me on the list. I'll buy a table like to your big event, and I'll buy all the tickets. And I was like, that's. And then thinking that was going to be like my way in, and then all of a sudden we go out for beers, and it's like, oh no, would you like to be more involved? And it's like, oh, okay. Like, open the wall up further. But no, but yeah, that's how I would suggest doing it. It's not throwing money at the problem. It's very much just get your foot in the door, and then like if you're a good fit and that works both ways, then yeah, keep doing it. Like, and stuff comes from it. But it's not like paying for Google ads.
Yeah,
it doesn't work.
yeah. And another channel that you do is LinkedIn. You know, you post on LinkedIn, and if you're listening to this, you're on LinkedIn. Follow James Edwards. Even if you don't want to hear about tax advice, some of it's quite funny. Is that something you enjoy? Is that something you do because work sometimes comes out of it, and it's a free thing to do? You know, what's your thoughts around that? LinkedIn posting.
Yeah, it's funny. I think a lot of people do it for different reasons. My reason used to be to get work out of it. Never anything really directly came out of it from the way that I did it anyway. What I use it for now is to connect other people either within the tax industry or within sort of law or financial advice or property or whatever it is. And because that's how I get work. I get work from someone spoken to 7 different people before they speak to me. Like, I can do a tax return, but it's typically something a bit more complex, and someone else is going, "Oh, I don't know that. Go and ask Jamie." When I first started using LinkedIn properly, I was still an employee at my last firm, and it was quite intimidating. Like I don't think they would ever actively tell you not to do it, but it was. I'd write an article and then I'd share it with a comment, which you can do on LinkedIn, and like that was talked about. Like it was like, "Oh, I saw you did that," and I was like, "Well, yeah, I got more likes than your one." You know? And it was like, and then I just thought like people. Then some people really liked it, some people really didn't like it. When I went out by myself, I was on Facebook and all this stuff, but like I'm only on LinkedIn now. I think it's a really, really valuable social media site. It's full of guff, like, don't get me wrong, but you can get rid of that. Like you can block people and like, I don't want to see this. Teach the algorithm to see better and better stuff. My stuff, I think it's helpful most of the time for my tax neighbours. Some of it I try to be funny. Some of it I'm just trying to be useful. Of like, hey, this is a new process that I've seen, and this is what I did, and this was the outcome. And some people really value that. I try to find a balance, but I've got a huge advantage over other people because I'm by myself. It's an intimidating thing, and I think if you're working for an employer, if you post something that someone maybe doesn't agree with, it's a risk. The only person I'm upsetting is Dean. It's like, well, and then, to be fair, there's been a few times he's been like, "Get that off LinkedIn right now." He's got his notifications set so that whenever I post, he sees it.
What's he said now?
Yeah, exactly. And Letitia does the same thing. You know, she's like, "Get that off." There's only a couple of times he's had to do that. I mean, I still disagree with him because he knows I'm right, but he's like, "Yeah, you're being too honest." I will say a lot of the stuff I write, I've written about 4 or 5 pints deep and then schedule it for the next morning. I'm like, that's what I suppose.
Draft it. I'll check that in the morning.
If I don't wake up early enough, it goes out. I'll just leave it. No, I do really enjoy it. I mean, it's not. I'm not trying to like build like 20,000 followers, right? It's not my thing. I just think it's a really useful application to sort of share specialisms and stuff, and also if a client's got a problem and I can post on LinkedIn and say, "Hey, does anyone know any tax advisors in Greece? Because I've got a specific Greek issue." Like that's me doing my job, because my client needs one. So. Yeah, I might not have the answer in every scenario, and I also do that. If someone in my network posts something, say, "Hey, does anyone know anyone?" I'll say, "I don't know, but I'll share for reach and stuff," and eventually we'll get to the right answer. So yeah, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. It's how I sort of use it, and I highly encourage people to do it. And just your mates will give you a hard time initially, but when you start doing a bit better in your own business, then like they shut up.
It's getting past the people that say, you know, it's not Facebook, but actually people want to see authenticity. They want to see that you're not just, you know, a corporate figure, like, you know, do you know what I mean? You don't want to see the real you on there, and I think a lot of people appreciate that. You did say that when you post, sometimes it's because, you know, you just want to help other people. Is that the thing that you like most about being a tax advisor?
Yeah, it is. I'm not going to go on to say like, oh, I just want to help people. That's not my thing.
Yeah.
But from the way that I first set up the business, like Edinburgh Tax Expert, when I set that up, I learned really quickly what it is that motivates me, and it's not running a business and making profit. It's not like that's really helpful. Don't undervalue that. But that's why Dean's in here. He used to rein me in a little. I want to get way more involved in the education side. Like I want, in order to do that in the best way, you get more involved with the governing bodies because that's what they're there to do. I said something quite flippant when I first started out. I said, I'd rather be good than rich, is basically what I said. I got laughed at a networking event where I said that too, but it's something I really believe in. I'm motivated by finding the right answer, which I think most people in tax are, to be honest. I don't think you'll find many people who are purely motivated by money in the tax world, because you're smart enough to do something that would pay you a bit better. But it's a very specific thing. You're very interested in this very specific thing, and you want to do it. And it's quite obvious when you meet another tax person. Like you're like we've got this like weird language that we speak to each other, and I like the. Very specifically, I don't think I would like corporate tax because I like the personal side too much. Like I like the family drama. And you don't really get that so much on the corporate.
Is that why you've also stayed in professional services and maybe not moved to an in-house tax role because of the nature of tax that you do?
Yes. I think that's accurate. Most industry stuff would probably fall into the corporate side, maybe the international side a little bit more. Personal tax less so. I did entertain an offer once when I was working in industry, but I think that was it didn't go very far. You might want to cut this bit, but basically I was slagging off the recruitment side. I got treated really poorly by the recruiter who contacted me about that job.
There are bad recruiters out there.
There are good ones too. I've had some good experiences too. But I did consider a role, a big financial institution. It was to do with life assurance gains and held in trust, and it was that explicitly I was going to do, and I'm quite good at that stuff. So I did entertain that for a little while. Well, I think I was on about £40,000 a year at the time, and this job I was told by the recruiter was about 100,000. So I was like, I'll pay attention. And then that 100,000 salary turned into 100,000 remuneration, and then it turned into something else until eventually I worked out the salary was roughly the same of what I was getting paid, and it was pretty poor. But I did consider industry once, but I think I'm too far down this rabbit hole now.
Yeah, well, you seem to be doing good well.
Yeah, well, I'm enjoying it.
And I was going to say, that's the main thing, isn't it? Not just doing well, you're enjoying it, you're driven by it. It gives you, or it's giving you things that, working for an employer or working in industry probably just wouldn't satisfy you enough in terms of who you are.
I'm unemployable now, Craig.
There's no going back.
I had to quit my own job.
Well, no, all that is really, really helpful. I think for people listening who maybe they are a tax professional, maybe they're not even in finance, but maybe they're thinking of setting up their own business one day. It's always good to hear of someone that's set up their own business and how they're finding it. And I do appreciate your honesty around difficulty in, I guess, managing that balance between work and life, because it is difficult. Like you said, I like to wrap up episodes by thinking about the next 12 months as well, and just asking you, do you have any professional or personal goals for the next 12 months that you're willing to share?
Yeah, absolutely. Personal, I need to get married next year. That's poor Samantha. She's been trying to get me to lock in a date for a long time now. But other things have just taken priority, like buying the family home and blah blah blah. So yeah, that's the next thing. I really attempt to not have another newborn in the Anderson Evers. Like since Anderson Evers set up every calendar year either Dean or I have had. This is the first year, unless Dean or Samantha surprises something on me, there's going to be another child. But yeah, professionally, I'd like to consolidate a little bit more on my personal tax side. I'd like to not focus so much on taking on new clients. I'd like to sort of focus on the guys I've got, but then again, I might change my mind depending how expensive a wedding is. And that's the point, is that I basically need to decide what I'm going to do for the year and then do my budget for that, for the company, to say, like, okay, I need this amount of money, so this is how hard I need to work, and this is how little time I can take off. And that's really helpful. Like, it's knowing that they're so interlinked that it's, and I basically have to have the argument of, like, this is how much I need to work in order to get that, and it might cause an issue with something that Dean wants to do. Maybe he's got some big plan that he's going to need to take some time off, or whatever like that. But yeah, my goal would be to try not to grow too much next year and really try to consolidate a little bit more, just so that I can just take a bit of a breather. Because, like I say, I'd like to focus on some stuff that I've pretty much got the ball on for a while. Who knows? I might hire 7 people and be like, right, you let's crack on. I don't know, but we want to hire some trainees, but hopefully we'll focus more on the accountancy side rather than the personal tax side. So yeah, we'd like to do that as a company, but me on my side, I think I'd like to slow down a little. But Dean will watch this and he'll nah, you're not doing that. Here's your sales target, get out.
Maybe you can have a good bit of time off first, you know.
That'd be good. But yeah, so marriage and hopefully try and slow down a little bit.
Brilliant, good. Well, thanks so much for coming on. Great to have you.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming round and having me on. It's really good.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks, James.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Professional Speaks podcast. This podcast was produced by Springwood Studio Productions. Remember, you can watch the episode recording on our YouTube channel, and if you can, please do subscribe and share with all of your friends. The more people who listen to this, the more guests we can have on to share, so that you can learn, be inspired, grow, and ultimately succeed in what you want to achieve in your career. Please also contact me if you have any feedback on this episode. I'd love to hear from you.